Hi, it's Dave Michels from Talking Points. We're at the Cloud Communications Alliance in Europe and Estoril, Portugal, and I'm with Lee Essex of Tango Networks. Lee, let's talk a little bit about my favorite topic, UCaaS Mobility 3. You've been working with a number of UCaaS providers. Do people understand the benefit that you bring versus an over-the-top app?
I think they're starting to understand it, Dave, certainly. It's a combination of us over the past years of having to educate the market on what the benefits are. I think the UC vendors have been so reliant on the over-the-top apps that they've pushed it heavily. But we've also seen a lot of research out there that users are pushing back on the OTT apps because they simply don't work. It's a poor user experience. So now people are starting to understand what a native mobile UC or a UCaaS mobility solution actually brings to them. But it's been a lot of education, and that starts with the service providers in the channel. But we can obviously see now that the end users, the consumers, are starting to realise the benefits of native mobility over the top applications. So they're starting to now ask their service providers for it, and they're starting to demand this from the UC providers.
So your approach when you do this involves an MVNO. And there's a little resistance to MVNOs in America because the locked phones. A lot of enterprises have locked phones. But in Europe, it seems to be a much less resistance. People are much more open to it.
Yeah, I mean, Tango are an MVNO themselves. We're a global MVNO. We're what we call a thick MVNO. We have a full-stop core. So yeah, it is reliant on the technology we bring to it. But the resultant is we need an unlocked device. And you're absolutely right, Dave. In the US, a lot of the mobile carriers are still locking their device, so it's proving difficult. In Europe, we got rid of that regulation. In fact, the regulators across Europe, when the UK was started as part of the EU, said to the carriers they cannot lock that. But we're also seeing a change in the way that particularly enterprises are procuring their devices. As we've seen communications move from what used to be the old comms guys into IT are asking the question of why are we getting these devices from a mobile provider? Why don't we just procure them in the exact same way that we do our laptops? We procure them en masse, we get a discount from Apple or Dell or those guys or Samsung, and we self-insure. So I think again it's starting to change. Is it going to change the attitude from AT&T? Absolutely not, because where did they get their business from?
Right.
The consumer. But we're seeing a big change in that. And people can, after a certain time, go to their carrier in the US and ask for it to be unlocked. And we're starting to see a bit of a softening.
But one of the big advantages of your model is you don't need to have a device, right? You just use a SIM card and most smartphones now support 2 SIM cards. And so,
absolutely. I mean, we're heavily pushing eSIM. The technology, it's good for deployment, it's good for the environment. There's lots of advantages, but you're absolutely right. Most devices now will support dual SIM. And you saw that we're all moving towards eSIM. And this is the device manufacturers. The iPhone 15 in the US is pure eSIM. So they're driving that. So absolutely, if you've got your own personal device, you can bring it, you can add a QR code in eSIM for your business profile, and you're good to go. No more carrying 2 devices around.
Now, I learned about Tango because you guys are working with some of the largest UCaaS providers in the industry. You're also working with a number of large carriers or mobile providers in the industry. So let me ask you, you're here. There's a lot of smaller providers here, and you even work with enterprises. I mean, who is a prospect for Tango Networks?
We work specifically with UCaaS providers, big or small. Obviously there's some Goliaths out there. There's Microsoft, Cisco, there's Zoom, but there's a lot of very successful players who have got multi-million subscribers. I mentioned NetSapiens out of one. They've just got over 4.5 million providers. So we work exclusively with those from an integration point of view. And you're absolutely right, we work with major tier 1 carriers to provide service across the globe. We're a channel business. We sell completely through the channel business. So it's service providers with either their own platform that they've stood up or they're reselling one of the larger ones. We don't work directly with enterprises. one of the key things about our service is it's API driven, so the enterprise can take our APIs and tailor the service to meet their exact needs.
All right, last question, Lee. I believe this is going to be the standard in the future. My question to you is, when is the future? Is this a 1, 2, 5 year, 10-year migration? What do you think is...
I'm going to put my neck on the block. So I know we've talked about that a lot while we've been here in Estoril. I think next year is going to be the real turning point, the pivoting point.
All right, you heard it here first. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dave.